Hi, in this video I'm going to go through what are the requirements to sponsor an immigrant for a family-based green card. My name is Rodrigo Canido. I'm an immigration attorney practicing here in the Bay Area in California. I normally do videos on immigration and how to get legal status here in the United States. So if those topics interest you, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Alright, so let's get into it. One of the requirements if you want to get a green card through a family member here in the United States is you have to show that you're not going to be a public charge. What that means is you're not going to be dependent on the government for financial support when you get your green card, that you're already going to have financial support. And one of the ways you have to demonstrate that to the government is by filing what's called an affidavit of support, or form I-864. All right. Generally, the petitioner fills out and signs that form when they submit your application for the green card. They submit it with your application for a green card. But sometimes the petitioner may not make enough money to qualify as the sponsor as well. So in some situations, you might need another person to help you with this process to be the sponsor or the joint sponsor. So some of the requirements to apply to become a sponsor are the following. First, you have to be a U.S. citizen, a U.S. national, or a legal permanent resident to submit this application. Also, you have to make enough income or have the assets necessary to support the immigrant as their sponsor. You have to be above 18 years of age. You have to be 18 or above, I should say. And you have to be domiciled in the United States. Okay, if you want to go forward with this process. So let's talk a little bit about the income requirement. I think the other ones are more straightforward. So how much money do you actually have to make per year to sponsor someone? Well, there's not just one answer. Okay, it depends on how many people you support financially. So let's go through one of those scenarios. All right, let's say, for example, you make $30,000 a year, but you don't have children, you're not married, and no one is financially dependent on you. Then can you sponsor someone for a green card? Well, in 2021, you should be able to, making $30,000 and, as I indicated, have no other financial dependence. No one else is dependent on you. So you should be able to meet that requirement. But let's change the scenario a little bit. What if that same person who makes $30,000 has three children, is married, and maybe is also supporting, his mom and father for some reason, or some other people are financially dependent on them? Then the $30,000 wouldn't be enough to meet the financial requirements. They'd have to make more. Okay? So one of the ways that immigration tries to determine, how much you actually make is they ask for your tax returns, your most recent tax returns. And let's say, for example, when you file those tax returns, you worked at a different job and you didn't make enough to qualify. But more recently, you found a new job and now you do make enough money. What can you do in that situation? Well, what you can actually do is get a letter from your employer indicating how much money you make. And that can help show that even though your tax returns don't reflect your current income, that letter definitely will help support that you do make enough money. You could also submit pay stubs from that employer as well, or recent pay stubs, to show that you make a higher income and do meet the threshold requirements to apply for the affidavit of support. How about a situation where you simply don't make enough money? You're familiar with the requirements of how much you need to make, but you just don't make enough. Okay, well, in that situation, what you could try is using additional incomes from family members who live with you, and combined with your income and the income from the family members, then maybe you can make sufficient amount. You can meet the threshold requirement that way. Okay, in some situations, you can even use the immigrant themselves if they are working also. Okay, another option, and one that I don't try much, is using your assets. So why I don't try this much is it's definitely possible, right? You can definitely use assets to qualify. But the way this works is you cannot use the full value of the asset. You can only use a certain amount. So there's a calculation that needs to be done in this process. So say, for example, you wanted to use the asset of your home. Say you're a homeowner. Well, you actually can't use the full value of that house that you own or the property you own, you know, if you were to sell it to support the person who's applying for the green card. Right? Immigration wants to know how much value you'll get for that home if you needed to sell it, you know, to support the person applying for the green card. In the case of someone who wants to use their house as an asset, you actually also need to get an appraisal of the value of the house. So it's a little bit more work to it, you know. So I generally, in my experience, I generally recommend that someone find an additional person, a joint sponsor, if the petitioner themselves does not make enough income to meet the threshold requirements. But it's definitely an option if you have a home or other assets that you could use to support the application. All right. So I also want to go through what are some of the documentation that you could submit that immigration requires. So what I submit generally is on top of the form I-864, and if necessary a second form I-864 for the joint sponsor, I always submit the tax returns, the most recent tax returns of the sponsor. Okay. I also ask my clients to give me 3 years of tax returns, not because I need to submit 3 years of tax returns, but because the form itself asks for 3 years of information from 3 years of tax returns as well. If it's applicable, I'll submit the form W-2. This is a form that your employer would give you. All right. In some situations, a form 1099 is also applicable. In addition to that, you also have to demonstrate your legal status. So to demonstrate that, if you're a U.S. citizen, you could submit a U.S. birth certificate. You could submit a passport with the biographic page of your passport as well. You could submit a naturalization certificate. If you're just a green card holder or a legal permanent resident and not a U.S. citizen, you could submit a copy of the front and back of your green card. All right. So it's not too difficult, the evidence you need to submit, but you just really want to be certain about meeting the requirements for income or the assets if you're going to use that. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got something out of it.